Well, welcome to our fourth lecture on Mesilat Yesharim. We are currently about to begin Perek Beis, that is the second chapter, and it is in Hebrew is the Ve'or Midat HaZehirut, that is describing the trait of Zehirut, which I guess could be translated as vigilance. Is probably the best translation. If you have a different one in the version that you're looking at. The word Zaher means to be careful or to be concerned or something. So to be vigilant, I think, is a reasonable English translation. And just a quick reminder, last week we studied the first chapter in which the Ramchal described to us what is the basic purpose for the basic obligation that a person has in his lifetime. Not the purpose, but the what is chovato adam ba'olamo? What is the person's obligation in this world? And I'm just going to summarize real quick some of the points that he made last time, and then we'll go to today. I kind of number one, he made the point that that this book, which is a book about ethics, right, is really a discussion of what our chova is, what is our duty, what is our obligation. So he looks at the world in terms of our obligations, right, as opposed to, and last time I contrasted that with another way of looking at the world through a lens of what people's rights are, but we don't look at it that way. And then he pointed out that it's always about where we're going. It's not about right now, but it's about what are the effects, what I'm doing now, what is it going to happen in the world to come, and how is this going to affect my tomorrow? How is this going to affect the world of tomorrow? He also made the point that it's based on the actions that we do, on what we do. He mentioned that the entire world is uplifted when we act good, and the entire world, the contrast, that it's brought down when we don't. And he talked about how important it is to make sure everything is done right, to be careful of everything. And that all of the above is only possible, he ended by telling us if we're humble, through humility. So that was what he laid down in the first chapter. So now we're about to begin the second chapter, the Ve'or Midat HaZehirut. So I want to just before I start, I want to say two quick things. First of all, thank you very, very much to Deanna on hosting us for the second time. And second of all, that tonight is the yard site of the anniversary of the death, the 35th, I think, of my grandfather. Abe Weinreb was his name. And so I'm going to dedicate tonight's year to his memory. Just a really brief, he came to America right after his bar mitzvah from Eastern Europe, from the Galicia region of Poland. He came from a Hasidic family of Sadigero Hasidim, and he came, but his parents had already made it to America, but when he was around 8 or 9 years old, but he was turned around by the authorities and sent back to Poland because he had some kind of a foot problem, and they thought he wasn't healthy enough. So he went back to stay with family members back in the small town in Poland when he was a child. He lived there for a few years, and all we know of those years is that they weren't most pleasant for him. But after his bar mitzvah, they were finally able to secure a visa for him and get him to America. But he got to America right after his bar mitzvah, and he went to Batavia, New York, which was a small farming community in upstate New York. And he went through 1st through 8th grades in a one-room schoolhouse in 1 year. And when he was 14 years old, went to work in the sweatshops in Manhattan. This was in the early 1920s. And he worked in Manhattan until the day he died, 77 years old. And I have a lot of really wonderful memories of my grandpa. And so tonight's his third. He died, I think it was 33 years ago today.
Wow.
So anyway, so I'm dedicating this to him. It's Abraham ben Chaim Yitzchak was his name. So, so today we're going to study the Ve'or Midat HaZehirut. Hine, behold, right? Inyan ha-zehirut. Remember, zehirut, this midah, this trait of vigilance, is the first in the list of traits upon which this book is built, right? So the first thing, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair stated, the first thing is vigilance. It's to be vigilant. What does that mean? So first he's going to describe what it is, and then he's going to describe some ideas about it. Then he's going to describe how to acquire it, and then he's going to describe how to stay away from some of the things that might lead you away from reading it. So there's going to be 4 chapters devoted to this particular trait, and there's going to be a similar pattern as he goes up the ladder to the other traits. So the first thing is to describe what does it mean to be vigilant. Okay, so hine inyan hazirut hu sheyeh ha'adam nizar b'ma'asav u've'inyanah, that a person should be careful in that which he does, right, in his deeds and his affairs, right. You should be careful, right. That's the bottom line. Klomar, what do I mean, right? So I'm going to expand on that. What do you mean you have to be careful? Misbonein u'mefakeach al ma'asav u'drachav, that you should think about and be concerned about, and look into, scrutinize your actions and your ways, your pathways in your life. I want to point out something that I pointed out last time, but it makes something extremely clear, and this is fundamental about Judaism, which differentiates it from many other religions. And you're going to find this consistently throughout this book. It is almost always about ma'asav, your actions. The Mesilat Yesharim is very, very rarely concerned with having faith in some idea or some concept, right? Or somehow becoming redeemed based on some belief system that you have. When you read through the Mesilat Yesharim, it's impossible not to be completely impressed by the fact that it's all about what you do. And you're going to see this repeatedly over and over and over again. There's virtually, he barely said a single word about belief systems and fundamentals of faith or anything like that, right? It's about ma'asim, it's about what we do, it's about how we act. And zehirut, concern, means thinking about what you do, right? What we do every day, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, how we act, what are ma'asim, what path is our life leading on. Levilti hatovim heim o imlo. Are these pathways good paths? Are our actions good or not? Levilti azov nafsho l'sakonas ha'avadon chas v'shalom. Right? You should be careful and concerned about your actions, whether what you're doing is good or bad, in order to avoid the danger of falling into avadon, which is under the best into loss and abandonment and danger, right? Because if we keep going on the wrong path, we're going to end up on the pathway towards destruction. Avadon could also be a pathway towards destruction. V'lo yelech b'mahalach. What I want to point out is some translate the idea of avadon in some spiritual way that makes it sound like hell, or I've seen it translated in my translation as perdition. I think that's incorrect. Avadon here means a pathway of destruction, right? As opposed to a pathway of something constructive, something good. It could be a good path. The point is that you should not just go in your usual manner like a blind person in the dark. What's interesting is that phrase, Iver ba'afela, is an interesting phrase, because for a blind person, presumably it's always dark, right? But the point here being that a mahalach hergelo is just going along your regular path without thinking. So Zehirut, at the bottom line, is thinking about what you're doing and considering is it good, as opposed to just going about what you're doing and not thinking about it. And logic would dictate that one should be obligated to think about what he or she is doing. Ki acharei sheyesh l'adam de'av haskel lahatzil et atzmo v'levrach me'avadon nishmato. Because a person has a knowledge and reason, because we are born with that capacity, and that we have the capacity to save ourselves from going on such a path, and the capacity and knowledge and ability to keep ourselves and run from going on that path. How could it be okay that a person should want to close his eyes and ignore, right, the things which he could or should be doing that could save him? Certainly, there could be nothing worse, nothing more base than this. To ignore. No, the bottom line is, he's making the argument. We have a brain. We have the capacity to think about what we should do. And therefore, it's logical and makes sense that we should think about what we should do, right? The very fact that we can means that we should. The ha'oseking, and one who does this, again, it's always the language of ose, doing. He rarely talks about anything other than doing. It's always about actions. And if you do this, meaning you actively think about what you're doing and why, and is it real good or bad, and I'm sorry, if you don't do this, and if you do the bad thing, meaning you ignore your knowledge and your discernment, and you just go along the usual path and do things just as you've always done them because you've always done that way, and walk through your life like a zombie just going, then you'd be even less me'habehemot me'achayot asher b'tivam l'shmor et atzmam. You'd be even worse than a member of the animal kingdom. Because at least their actions are always calculated to guard their own safety and health, right? Right? And the animal will always run from something which endangers them. They'll always fly away when you get near the bird because it knows that you're in danger. The animal will run away, right? So they at least know to avoid the kinds of dangers that they are aware of. So even an animal has enough discernment to recognize that I should run from things that I want to be away from and run towards things that I need. But us as a human being, but if we as humans were to just go through our lives without thinking, thinking, is this a good path? Should I do this or shouldn't I do this? Right? It's like a blind person, a blind person walking along the edge of a river, which is clearly extremely dangerous. But also, it's much more likely that he's going to get harmed than otherwise. A slight misstep will fall into the river. He can't see where the border between the river and the land is, and he'll fall. And most likely will get hurt. The same thing, us, if we go through our lives without thinking about what we're doing, we will most likely get hurt because there's so many pitfalls, so many places for us to fall. Because without taking the proper precautions that he would need to take because of his blindness, whether it is natural blindness, like actual blindness, or it's because you decide to be blind, right? Right? Either you go through a dangerous situation without knowing how dangerous it is, or you go through without thinking and just deliberately ignoring how dangerous it is. Which happens when somebody closes his eyes by choice. It's the same thing. So the bottom line is, not looking both ways before you cross the street, so to speak, is dangerous and will lead to bad. V'hinei, and behold, Yirmiyah, right? The prophet Yirmiyah, Jeremiah, he was complaining about the evil that occurred during his generation. For this reason, because they were suffering from this malady, right? They ignored what they were doing. Their own actions. They didn't even pay any attention to what it was that they were doing. They didn't think, should I do this or should I abandon and not do this? And therefore he criticized them and he said, nobody cares about his evil path in such a way that he tells himself, what have I done? They keep going on their path like a horse running into battle. A horse runs into battle with such a charge, he's not able to veer a little to the right or a little to the left. He just keeps going straight because of the momentum and of his run. They were running and going in the path of their habit, the darcheim, and their usual way, and this kind of tells us what he's telling us now, a little bit of what he's about to say in the next paragraph, without giving themselves any time to look into and to be careful about and to check into and to think about what he's doing and the path that they're going on. And what happens when you do that? If there's a big hole in the way while the horse is running straight, right, and he's not looking because he's not paying attention, he's going to fall in the hole and he's going to die from the thing. So if we just keep running along our life's path without looking, that's what's going to happen. So he just told us, really, the secret is to give ourselves a little bit of time to actually stop and think, rather than just go through every day just because I wake up in the morning, because that's the time I wake up. I go to work, I drive here, I drive there, I buy this, I buy that, I do this, I do that. And then before you know it, you're on the wrong path. This idea of hergel, the idea of human beings always just doing the same thing because they've always been doing the same thing and keeping on the same path without thinking about it, is one of the strategies of the Yetzer Hara, right? Of our inclination towards evil, the Armaso, and his tricky ways. So we'll find that the Mesilat Yesharim uses the idea of a being called the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that convinces us to go on the other way. As we go through the book, it's going to become clear, and I think you could even see it here, that it doesn't mean to say, like, we have to get away from our childhood notions that there actually is a thing called the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is indicated by all of these human tendencies that we have, right? And this particular tendency is one of those things that embodies this idea called the Yetzer Hara. That is the tendency to just keep doing what we're doing without thinking. Right? He, meaning this inclination of ours, right, is constantly makes life, it weighs us down, right, with our labors of life, right, with such constancy, right, that in our hearts, actually, that we don't have any time or space to think and to look into which path we're going. We're driving down the street, and we have to be so careful, and we're working so hard doing whatever it is that we're doing that we're not even thinking about which road we're going on, right? Because he knows, the evil inclination knows, even for a split second we would think about the path that we're on, certainly right away would say, whoa, I'm on the wrong path, right? What I'm doing now is leading to strife, it's leading to failure, it's leading to hatred, it's leading to whatever path you're on. If a person, if every single time you go to a Thanksgiving dinner or whatever with your family, you always get into the same old fight because you always do the same old thing over and over and over again, right? Without stopping to think before you go, wait a minute, what am I going to do different this year so that instead of getting into a fight, we actually enjoy the time together, then all you're going to do is you're going to constantly go down the same path. You have to stop and think, what do I need to do? What's wrong with the path that I'm on? How can I correct it? How can I make it different this time? How can I make it better? If people would just stop to think even for a little, then it would set them on a new path, so that the regret for the bad path would grow, and we would desire to go on the right path until we would leave the wrong path completely and we'd stay on the right path. And this is similar to the Eitzah, to the advice that Pharaoh had. Remember, the first thing he said was, make them work harder, right? 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 Make them work harder so that they should stop listening to all this nonsense about going free. They don't need freedom. Make more bricks, work harder, because the more you make them work, the less time they have to think, wait a minute, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's something else. Maybe there's a different way we can approach this. His intention was that not to give them any time, so that they shouldn't even stop and think for a moment. He wanted to bother their to infect their hearts, so to speak, right, from any, so that they shouldn't have any chance to think. Because of the constant struggle and the constant work that just keeps on going nonstop. That is what the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is trying to do to us all the time in our lives. He's a man of war. He knows what he's doing. He knows his trickiness, right? In other words, human nature is something that knows exactly what it's doing and why, and it's going to keep us following that path, right? The only way to get out of it is to actually do it with intelligence. Is to think of a new strategy, a new way. This is what the prophet cries when he says as follows, right, in the Navi of Chagai. Pay attention to your ways, right? This is literally exactly what he's talking about. Shlomo and Mishlei and Proverbs says, Al titin shein alei, don't let yourself fall asleep. Right? You should save yourself like a deer, or more correctly, an antelope, right? But a deer which is always paying attention, right? If you watch a deer on the side of the road, or if you're walking through a field, the deer immediately is constantly paying attention. He hears the slightest move. He picks up his ears. Whoa, do I need to run? Is there something threatening? Right? That's how we need to live our lives. Never just think, oh, everything's cool, because the moment you think that, that's when a predator or a hunter is going to get you. Right? And Chazal say, someone who thinks about and evaluates his past in this world, that's the kind of person who will experience the salvation of God. And it's obvious. Even if a person does pay attention to himself, right? Even if you do think, right? You can't do it alone. We need to have you need to have the help of God along with you. We can't do it on our own. No human being is powerful enough, strong enough to conquer this very human nature, which he's discussing. The human nature to simply do as we've always done. The human nature to not change. The human nature to stay with what's easy, right? We need help. We need help from God. This desire, this inclination of ours to go on the wrong path is strong. Like the verse says, right? Right? The Rasha, meaning the way he's interpreting this verse, the Rasha is referring to the evil inclination is waiting on the righteous person. It's constantly pushing us in that direction. And he wants to push him on the wrong path, right? He's not going to leave him alone. However, if a person does pay attention to himself, then you're guaranteed God will help you. If you help yourself and take the first step, then he will hold your hand and help you through the rest. The nitzol min ha'yetzer hara, you can be saved from this evil inclination. But if you don't take the first steps and you don't try on your own and you don't pay any attention, then certainly God's not going to do it for you. So we can't depend on him. If you don't care about yourself, nobody is going to care about you. It's like what Chazal teach us, if you don't have any knowledge, you can't have mercy on such a person. That doesn't mean you're not supposed to have mercy on people that don't have a high IQ. It means if you don't use your knowledge to pay attention and you just go about your life the way you're going about, the way that he described, right? That kind of a person who's not willing to help himself or herself, it's not worth having mercy on such a person. And similarly, the more famous statement than Avo, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? I wanted to pose a question and see what you guys think. I have some thoughts, but I want to see what people think. What does this mean? What do you think it means when he says that if you take the first step yourself, that God will help you, that we can't do it on our own, but we need to have God's help? Like, what do you think that means?
You can't do nothing. You have to, it's in line with his overall advice, which is taking action. You can't just be idle and pray away your problems or think that if you pray, God is going to take care of them. You have to do something to kind of meet him halfway, sort of,
Okay.
to make an honest effort.
How do you think he helps you? What does it mean when he says he helps you?
I think it can mean different things. It can mean maybe he's going to, if you don't have all of the resources or all of the answers right away to a problem, but you start and you at least acknowledge that you have this problem and you want to solve it, maybe along the way, you're given the people and the tools and the answers will come. You just have to trust that he's going to catch you. You're not going to just be left abandoned.
Okay. Yeah.
You have to be your own nachshon, and then the C parts.
And then see, right. Explain what you meant. I don't know if they know what you're referring to.
Oh, when parting of the Red Sea, then the first person that walked in, that's the fun little trivia that Rabbi always gives us is nachshon. Whenever there's a volunteer, we need a nachshon person to go first. And then when he stepped in, that's when the sea finally actually parted.
Any thoughts? Jeff, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone.
You're not alone. And just know, so I just wanted to, first of all, I appreciate everyone's contribution. I was thinking like not alone, the knowing, you see, if you didn't believe in a God, let's say you didn't have a God with you and you just wanted the daunting task of improving our lives and trying to get past the mundane, step after step, day after day, same after same old, right? It's extremely difficult, and it may seem futile. Like, why even bother? This is the path that I'm on. This is the path that I've always been on. That's the path that he's on. That's the path that she's on. Everybody's doing the same thing. Like, the whole society's all the lemmings are all walking over the cliff, and they've been walking over the cliff, right? So you don't have, but knowing and understanding that we have a purpose, we have a reason, and that God is here, that we have a goal, we have an objective, and it can be done. Just that knowledge, I think, allows us to then look around and say, wait, I do have resources, like you were saying. I do have a friend that I can talk to that can help me with this problem. I don't have to do the same thing today. I can, look at, I do have family I can rely on. I do have friends I can rely on. I do have things in this world, resources that I can draw upon. I do have a park that I can go for a walk and settle my mind. And instead of just doing the routine, just take a few minutes to think and do things different. And without God in the picture, I think a lot of people would, there's no purpose, there's no point, and we'll never be able to pull ourselves out of it. I mean, that's kind of the way I saw it. It's just putting together some of these thoughts. So this is so he just described to us what is a Zehirut, right? What it is. What is this trait of vigilance? How does he translate the word? Does he also say vigilance? It would be the heading of the chapter. The trait of
Yours does. Mine doesn't even have like a
Chapter
title.
Yeah.
It's chapter 3.
Chapter 3.
Yeah, it's chapter 3.
Watchfulness.
Watchfulness.
watchfulness. Okay, so yeah, Zahir means Zahir is to be careful. It could also mean to watch, like an azhara, as a warning, right? I'm warning you, look out for this. So the translation I have is vigilance. Watchfulness is good. I don't know if there's another. What do they have on Safari?
Watchfulness.
Watchfulness.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. So that's the basic idea. So that's Zehirut. So now he's going to do like he's going to do in almost each and every one of the traits as we go through them is B'chelkei HaZehirut. What are the elements? Well, what does it include? So it includes. So he said that basically Zehirut means, right, to be careful, right, or to be watchful, or to be vigilant, whatever. And the bottom line of it is to pay attention. Right? Pay attention to what you're doing. That really summarizes what we've learned so far about vigilance. Don't just go about the usual, but pay attention. Am I on the right path? Am I not on the right path? Okay, so now he's going to, okay, so I'm paying attention. What am I paying attention to, right? What am I looking at? How am I analyzing it? So he's going to start breaking it up into its constituent parts. And we'll see, like I said, this pattern is going to be as he goes through each trait. So hine, behold. Somebody who wants to pay attention to himself. Okay, so I just told you you're supposed to pay attention. So now let's assume that all of us are following instructions and we would like to really pay attention to our lives. So there are two things you need to think about, right? What do I need to think about? Okay, is it good, right? So two things. The first thing you need to think about is you need to think about what is this good, right? I told you we're supposed to think, am I on a good path or a bad path? Well, what does a good path mean, right? On the flip side, of course, is then what's the bad path, right? How do I know if this path is leading in a good direction or a bad direction, right? He's not answering that question yet, but it certainly makes sense that you need to think about that, right? And the second one is, okay, now somehow I determined that this is the test for good, this is a test for bad. Okay, well, the actions that I'm doing, remember again that emphasis, the actions that I'm doing in my life, everything that I do, are these actions leading on the good path? Are these actions on the bad path? So if you determine that good means to be a certain way, are the actions that am I doing leading me in that way? And if bad means a certain way, are the actions that I'm doing leading me in that way? So that's the two things we need to think about. And these things that you need to think about, you need to think about them at two different times. B'shas maseh, v'shelo b'shas maseh. You need to think about them while you're doing them and not while you're doing them, before you do them, right? Or after, right? Don't think that just because you choose a path and you're on that path and now you don't have to think about it anymore. You have to constantly be reevaluating. And don't think that now that I'm done my day's work and I'm sitting down on the couch and drinking a glass of wine, that now I don't need to think now. No, now you need to be thinking about what's going to be tomorrow. What did I do today, right? B'shas maaseh, why do you need to think while you're doing it, right? Shelo yaseh shum maaseh mibli sheyishkol so b'moznei zosei idea. You have to always be thinking that I never should do any action without weighing, right, on the scale, right, of knowledge, this knowledge. In other words, is this action that I'm doing good or bad? So you can change it appropriately or stop. V'shelo b'shas maaseh. And not when you're doing it. You should always remember those things that you have done, right? Pay attention. Think through your day. Think through your week. And think, what have I done until now? And also weigh them on the scale, on the same scale of good versus bad. What are the things that I did which were bad? So that I can push that away. What are the things that I've done that were good, so that I can make sure I keep doing those things and make them even better. And if you do find bad things, then you have to start thinking of plans, of strategies. What strategies he do to stay away, to turn away from these things, and purify himself from these bad traits that he's been, these bad actions that he's been doing, right? So and this idea is what Chazal were teaching us when they said the following statement in the Talmud in Arabic. It says, Noach lo la'adam shelo nivra. It would have been better for people had they never been born, right? Because this world is too full of problems. But we're here, now that we are here, the best you can do is you should search in your actions. You should always, and lefashfesh doesn't mean just to search, but to search within a search, like to really look carefully, scrutinize maybe is a better word, okay. And some say mashmesh, which literally means to mess or to fiddle around with, right? But it means to not just search, but like really look and feel through the nitty gritty pieces, right? Both of these languages of pishpush and mishmush, right, are both two good things. It doesn't mean it's either or, it means both, right? and he's going to translate it his own way. Ki hinei ha-pishpush b'masim. What does it mean, pishpush, which we translated as scrutinize? Hu lachkor al klal ha'masim u'nisponabos, to look at the totality of the actions. Like, what did I do, right? And you look at the grand action that you did, right? Are there certain things that I did that I shouldn't do? Let's say I drove to the market, or I went to the supermarket to go shopping. So think through the things that you did. Don't just do everything the same day, right? Were you a mensch? Did you cut people off in the parking lot? Did you go through a red light? Did you, jump into the parking space before somebody else? Did you get out when you saw somebody that had heavy packages and help them? Did you, and then when you went shopping, did you buy food that's healthy and good for you? Did you overspend? Did you buy things you don't need? Did you, who knows, go on, so on and so forth. Did you say please and thank you? Did you knock people over? Did you knock so you go through all the actions that you did. But the mishmush, which is an even deeper feeling, is thinking, what about those good things that you did, right? When I said thank you, right? Did you maybe have some kind of ulterior motive that wasn't so good? Maybe you were being nice because you wanted to take advantage of someone or get a better position or something, right? Or maybe you said thank you, but you did it without smiling, or you did it and you didn't really care, so it might have been a good action, but it wasn't perfect, right? Maybe there's things that in what you did that are bad that you need to get rid of. This is similar, right? It's like if you take a cloth, you go to the store and you're buying a cloak, right? Nowadays, this isn't usually how we test things. One of those days, imagine you go to a tailor and you kick the tires of a car, right? You pull it, make sure it's not going to tear easy, make sure it's strong, it holds its own, right? Is it worn out, or is it nice and fluffy and soft or whatever, right? So you don't just look at it and say, oh, this looks like a nice shirt. That's one thing. Yeah, it looks like a nice shirt, but now you need to be mamashmish, test it out, right? Is it really a good shirt? Is it going to be comfortable? Is it going to last the winter, and so on? The same thing. We have to examine all the things that we do to make sure that they are free and clear and pure, so that we know for sure we're on the right path. Klal hadavar, the general rule of what I said in summary is as follows. The person should always be looking into all of his actions, and he should be paying attention to all of his ways and paths in his life. You should not leave any bad habits or any bad traits. Certainly not things that are outright sins and outright transgressions we should keep out of our lives. But even things that are not necessarily open sins, but things that are just bad traits to have. Vehinini, right? And I think that it is necessary for a human being that he should be careful and he should always be evaluating his ways on a daily basis, right? So we should set aside a time in the day, and this is really the basis of the Muslim movement, is to set aside time, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 seconds, but something, right? Set aside a few minutes every day, right? Or maybe longer than a few minutes, right? Just like the big businessman. You go to a big businessman, he's going to look at the stocks. He's going to look at his investments. He's going to see every day. He's going to look what happened today in the world that might affect these investments, that might affect this business, that might affect this, right? And he's going to decide, I need to change this. I need to change that. I need to be careful here. I need to be careful there. And when you're dealing with millions of dollars, if you don't look at every day, then 2 days later, you could be left with no dollars, right? So no less should we be concerned about our actions in our lives. So those people, they're constantly looking into their many businesses so that they shouldn't get ruined. And he sets aside a time every day to analyze the markets, to analyze his businesses, make sure nobody's stealing, make sure the factories are producing, make sure the products are getting good reviews, etc., etc. right? It shouldn't be that you decide this every once in a while. Every Yom Kippur, I think about it, and even then, it depends how long the break is, right? So that's every once in a, that's not how it should work, right? It should be a regular daily thing. Ki rav hatolada, right? Because this yields tremendous results, right? By spending real time on a regular basis, right? So this is a very practical. He's giving this as a practical piece of advice. Set aside 5 minutes a day to sit down and think about what you did that day, right? And was it right? How can you make an improvement? You may not remember every single thing you did that day, but the things you do remember, hopefully you'll find at least one thing that you can make a little bit better. The rabbis taught us, importantly, they taught us explicitly the need for us to make this cheshbon, to make this a calculation, a reckoning. It said as follows. It's a paraphrase of a verse in Bamidbar, and where it's talking about it has nothing to do with what it means. It's talking about the Jews while we were wandering in the desert, but it's like a play on words. Al Kain Yomer HaMoshlim, the rulers said, Bo Cheshbon, come to Cheshbon, to the place of Cheshbon, right? So the Chazal understood, they've used this verse to teach us a lesson. Al Kain Yomer HaMoshlim, those rulers, meaning those who are rulers b'yitzram, over their own inclinations, right? Those that are rulers over themselves, right? Those people that have self-control. Bo nechashev cheshbon shalom. You should come and think about what's going on in the world, right? Hafsid mitzvah k'neged schara. You should think, what do I lose by doing the right thing, and what do I gain by doing the right thing? Uschara vera k'neged hafseda. What do I lose by doing the wrong thing, a sin, right? And what do I gain by doing the wrong thing? So they're using that verse just to teach us the lesson that if a person who has control over himself, right, a person who can really control what, rather than just do what she just does every day, the same thing that she always does, has the opportunity to think for a minute, right, and control it and change it. Such a person will think, will think about what they're doing. And this is because to truly fulfill this advice, right? You cannot do this, and you cannot really see it truthfully until you've already you're not in the control of what your inclination does. In other words, the only people that can truly achieve this are those that have learned how to rise above the hergel, the idea of just doing the same thing because they always do it. When you're the kind of person who's learned how to control, how to take a better path, how to change your path, how to improve your path, such a person can actually gain benefit from taking this time out. If you're the kind of person who's still stuck and tied up in the prison of your inclinations, if you're still led by the prison of doing things the same way you've always done them, this person will never see this truth. And this is true in so many ways, but we see this around us all the time. People that are just stuck and never want to change and want to only do things the same way they've always been doing them, right? Because it's too hard to be above that. They will never see a need to change, right? They will always think that what they've always been doing is the right way to go, right? They don't see the truth. Truth can be staring them in the face, but they won't see it, right? They won't even be able to recognize that it's truth. They'll see it, and they'll see it in a twisted way. Our desires, our inclinations literally blind us, right? They blind us so that what we see, this is so true today. At least, when we see things happening around us, and then you talk to somebody else who doesn't get it, and what they're seeing is different. they see a whole different set of facts, even though the truth is literally staring them in the face, but they won't see it. They just won't, because it's too hard because if they saw it, they would have to make changes, and making changes they don't want to make changes. They'd rather just keep on going in the same path of destruction that they've been going on. And this is what the rabbis taught us when they said, Tashes choshech bihi laila, right? Right? You have brought upon darkness upon us, and then night came. And they said as follows in Bava Metzia and the Talmud, Zeh olam hazeh tzedom l'layla. So referring to the world that we live in, which is very similar to night, right? God brought upon us darkness, right? And then night has come. And think for a moment about how wonderful this idea is, if you really think about it. And on the surface, it sounds pretty simple and straightforward. It doesn't sound so deep. But think about it for a minute and you'll see just how beautiful this idea is. Right? A person, when it's dark outside, can make two basic mistakes, right? It could be so dark that you just simply don't see, right? You go, it's dark, I have no idea what's in front of me. So in other words, I'm blind to what's in front of me. Oh, or you see there's something, but you can't make out what it is. So if there's a pillar and you think it's a person, or a person you think it's a pillar, right? So darkness can blind us so that we see nothing, or darkness can blind us in such a way that what we think we see is really something else, right? So Kain Chomri is the Gashim Solom is that is what all of this world is like, all the time, whatever we see around us. Our brains, our logic, our knowledge, our mind is darkened by the world that's around us. Our desire to stay on the same path, our desire for hergel, our desire to keep doing the same thing, causes these same two mistakes. Number one, it simply blinds us to what the obstacles are, right, in front of us in the ways of the world. We simply don't see them. And this is so important. Like, we have conversations sometimes with people and they're just blind. They just didn't see, right? They just don't see, and they won't see, right? And I say I'm sure I'm guilty of it myself, right? You know, we only see the evidence that we want to see. We only see the evidence that backs up whatever it is that we've always thought, so that we don't, God forbid, have to challenge our minds and think maybe we were wrong, right? So the only things we see is the evidence that we like, not the evidence that we don't like, right? So the fools, they keep going securely, thinking they're going on the right path, right? And they never are afraid of the obstacle because they end up crashing into the obstacles and they fall and they destroy themselves. It's like the Torah says, the verse says in Mishlei in Proverbs, the way of the evil is like being in the dark. They don't even know what the obstacles are in front of them that they're going to bump into. It says a person who is wicked will see evil, and the fools will just pass over the obstacles and they'll end up punished. It also says right? Just other verses, I'm gonna go through them. But the second mistake, is even worse than the first. So the first mistake is being so blind that we don't even see the obstacles. We just go through our lives and pretend they're not even there because we don't even know they're there. We're just so blind because we don't look. But the second one is even worse. Where you see things, and the things that are actually evil are looking you in the face and you're pretending that they're good, right? The things that are actually good are looking you in the face and you're calling them bad, right? It's remarkable how people do this all the time. Like things which are blatantly evil, and they could somehow explain to you that it's a good thing. Or things that are blatantly good, and they somehow explain to you that it's a bad thing. And it's all because of a desire. Remember, the enemy here is Hergel. Remember how we started here. The enemy Hergel is habit of wanting to be on the same path. That's what Zehirut is. It's being careful, it's being vigilant to think about that path and decide, is it good or bad? How can I change it to make it better? But if you don't even, you don't even see the obstacle. And when you do see the obstacle, you make the opposite conclusion of what it really is. What happens is you see the obstacle, and not only you don't just ignore it and continue going, you get even worse because you think the good is bad and the bad is good. You get stronger in going down the bad path and stronger in avoiding the good path. It's not enough that you just can't see the truth. Right? Right? So they can't see the truth that the evil that's staring you in the face, you ignore that it's there. It's worse. They find all kinds of proofs, right? Venisyonos and signs that mochichim that prove according to their twisted logic, right? Haros, their evil twisted logic, and their lying and false notions and false ideas and false philosophies. They can somehow explain to you that what's bad is actually good and what's good is actually bad, right? This is the biggest evil that ruins them and truly brings them down into the depths of destruction, the depth of the grave. This is what the verse says when it says, the heart, the soul of this nation has become fat. Its ears are heavy. Right? Lest they even possibly, God forbid, see, right, that which is real and hear that which is real, and that their heart should understand that what's good is good and what's bad is bad. Why is that? Because they're living in this darkness, and they're under the control of their inclination to stay on that evil path. If you're able to take yourself out of that prison, right? Then you can see the truth for its truth. You can see actual truth for truth. And then you can bring other people along with you and you can give them proper advice. I still have 5 minutes. I would really like to finish this chapter. So, what is this comparable to? What? Ligan hamavucha. It is like a labyrinth, like one of these garden labyrinths. It's by the nobles. They have this. It's done for fun. They have plants and rows of bushes that are like walls. And I'm going to go through this a little quicker. And there's all kinds of twisted paths that are mixed together. Each one, when you're in the path, they look the same. In the middle, there's like this gazebo, a nice portico, gazebo or something in the middle that you want to get to. That's where you want to get to. But however, the paths, some are straight and some are twisted. Some actually do get to the goal and some don't. Some end up in a dead end, right? And some of them just get you messed. But if you're walking on the paths, you see a path. You have no idea if it's the right one or the wrong one, right? From that angle, from that perspective, you can't see any difference between one and the other. Unless you've been on this path before and you know when to turn right and when to turn left, right? And if you once reached the goal, but if you're in this gazebo that presumably is lifted up in the air and you could see the whole thing, right? And you already got there, you can see all the pathways and you can tell which one are the correct ones and the false ones. You could say, hey, you're on the wrong path. Hey, you're on the right path because I see where it leads, right? If you pay attention to the person that knows, right? But if you're stubborn and you refuse to listen to the person that knows the truth, right? Then you're never going to get out. He's never going to reach his goal. So it is with this idea. A person who does not rule over his inclinations, right? In other words, if you still are completely a slave to your habits, right, and you have never learned how to overcome those bad habits, you're wandering through this labyrinth. Lo yuchal avcha. You're not going to know which way to go, where to go. But if you have learned how to overcome them, right? Right? Because you've already, at least once in your life, reached the gazebo, you've reached the middle, you've reached the goal. So you understand that it's possible to rise above this, right? You know that you can. So you know that when you look for the truth, you can go on the true path. Then you can not only do it, but remember, and I pointed this out in one of the previous lectures at least once, right? The emphasis that the Mesilat Yesharim always, and this, you're going to see this as we go through this paper, he always talks about self-improvement, and then you're going to help other people. And then you're going to help the world around you, right? And he's saying the same thing over here, because he's been emphasizing Zehirut, right? Vigilance or watchfulness, however you want to translate it. Be careful, so that you can help other people, right? It never just ends with you. It's always going to be, and then you're going to help others. Right? So what are those other people telling you? If you're going to listen to the guy in the gazebo who's already in the middle, what's he going to tell you? What's he going to say? He's going to say, Bo cheshbon. He's going to tell you, think about what you're doing. That's what he's going to tell you. That's his advice, right? The advice of the one who's successful is stop and think about what you're doing. Make a cheshbon, right? Calculate, decide, is this right? Is this wrong? Let's think about the point of this world. They've already been tested. They've already seen, they've already learned that is the true path. In order to reach good, that you're searching. The Lozbat said there is no other way. You can't get there by not thinking. You can't just march like one of the lemmings and get there. It doesn't work that way. It only happens to those that stop and think. And we're about to complete pretty much on the hour mark. The general rule is as follows. You should always be thinking, right? The Cholzman all the time. And during that specified time. You should set aside a time to think, right? Maybe it's every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, but set a time to think. But also think while you're doing it. Don't think you already fulfilled your obligation. You don't have to think anymore. Right? What is the proper true path according to the Torah? That a person is supposed to be going on. Right there, he kind of gave us a little hint as to it's a philosophical idea of what the point of the Torah, and that is to give us a help. Right? He told us we need to figure out what's good and what's not good. Well, the Torah is there to help guide us and to tell us know what is good. Right? And then think about what you're doing. Now that you know what's good, what my actions, are they bringing me in that direction or not? In this way, you will certainly purify yourself from evil things with the asher kol drachav, and can straighten out your ways. Like the verse says, Pales ma'agal raglecha, right? Like pales is to like a surveyor, to lay out the pathways of your feet, right? It's the image of somebody who who surveys a piece of land to decide how you're going to build. So that and lay out the paths. That's the guy who thinks beforehand. And if you do that, then all of the ways that you go will be proper and will be successful. Yomer, and it also says we need to search out our ways, the nachkora, and we should examine them, and in that way we can return to God. So that completes this chapter. The next chapters, he's going to continue talking about vigilance, but he's going to give us ideas on how to acquire this trait of vigilance, and then he's going to give us some ideas about things that could keep us away from it, and how to stay away from things that can hold us back. So, yeah, all right, I'll open the floor for questions or comments or observations or anything. People online, people that are here.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like trusting parents, and parents or grandparents, even just elderly people who've walked through life and they've experienced things. And the younger people they tend to not easily trust and take that wisdom and that advice. But as you get older, you realize, oh, wow, he was right, or she was right, or I really would have benefited from actually taking their advice at the time.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, that's just kind of what came to mind for me.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting comparison. And it's true. Yeah, we're always stubborn. We think we know better. But we should learn.
I feel like this guy's seen some stuff.
Which guy?
This guy.
Oh, this guy.
That's pretty wise. He's
Yes.
like, they're blind.
Yeah. No, he's definitely seen stuff. And one of the main reasons to start off with his biography was that we should know.
Yeah, that's true. And I just feel like it's almost like he's forgiven us. It's like they know not what they do, kind of. They're blind. But then then he comes back in and he's like, they shouldn't be blind. They should see where they're, they should look where they're walking.
Right.
I just wanted to add, there's a problem of excessive anxiety. And indeed, when we were parents, one of the psychologists, a cousin, said, you're too protective. Don't make the child so fearful. And so the question of be careful, at some point, if you're too careful, you become overwhelmed with anxiety. And,
Yeah. I mean, that's really every trait has, when taken to an extreme, can be harmful. So clearly he's not discussing that right now, because he's discussing the importance of vigilance. But in the next trait, which is Zehirut, which is to some extent, I don't know how to translate that. Alacrity? How does he translate? Look at chapter 5. How does he translate the title of chapter 5? Because that's like alacrity is the way I don't even know what alacrity means.
Yeah.
But Zehirut means getting up and doing what needs to be done, right? It's kind of like the opposite of Zehirut, right? So and not really the opposite, but it's the opposing pair, and we need to find the right balance. On the one hand, you have to be zohir, you have to be careful and watchful to make sure you don't do the wrong thing. But on the other hand, you also have to get up and do the right thing when it presents itself, and stop thinking so much and do it. So, but right now he's focusing on the Zehirut aspect.
Right.
So and they're all important. They're all part of their balance that we have to achieve.
What comes to mind is what they sometimes say they teach you in law school and elsewhere. I'm a lawyer. Never ask a question where you don't know the answer. But the problem with that is then you're so paralyzed that if you follow that advice strictly, it doesn't lead anywhere. So
that may be true in law school, and probably is good advice for a lawyer, but I don't think it's a good advice for our spiritual quest to live a good life. Because then you should ask, especially the questions that you don't know the answers to.
there it is.
So otherwise, you'll never know the answers. All you'll know is everything you already know, and that's not going to help you make yourself any better.
That's not my
Yeah. All right. Well, I just a couple things. I'll be away for the next 2 weeks because I'm doing a military training. So our next class should be 3 weeks from now. Okay, so that would be July. Let me see. July the 1st. Tuesday, July 1st. Is that okay?
Right.
So I'm gonna miss 2 weeks. Yeah. I said, yeah. Let's just do it that way. Okay.
I'll send out a text message.
All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming.
Well,
Believe me.
I hope you don't end up in Los Angeles.
Okay.